welcome to Fluorine Models Kit Review Time, something a little bit different. Today we've got Rodens. This is the 172nd An-12BK-PPS. Okay, so what does all of that mean? It basically means it's electronic warfare type aircraft, hence it's got some gorgeous lumps and bumps all over this particular jet. So, as you can see, looking at the box, lovely bit of artwork as well with the actual starfighter up there as well. Okay, the usual blurb on the box. You got your kit number, which is this an 046? Okay, a few of the other different versions they do this particular kit. Obviously, this is just a different version of it, but you say you can have the sort of standard ones, or you say you got this one with the extra lumps and bumps on it, just like that. Now, Roden. What is Roden? If you haven't heard of them before, they're one of those companies that don't release tons and tons of kits. What they do release tends to be very, I find a weighted object here, a very sort of specialist type company in what they actually do. Okay, so they tend to pick very unique subjects and then do a couple of different versions of them and everything else like that. The most famous one I've probably built will be the Mohawk, which is actually not the best kit in the world going together, but when it's done, it's something a little bit different. It's really, really nice. So the first thing that strikes you in this giant box is the kit in the corner, literally. Okay, so that's all we get out of all of this. As you can see, big old fuselage pieces there. We'll have a look at it in a moment. And we've got those over there. So we have a little sealed bag here. Is this easy open type bag? No, it's not. Okay, so we'll have to dive and cut. Just down in here. Decals, we'll have a look at those in a moment. Okay, so if we just bring the cameras in just a little bit. There we go. Right, so as you can see, blurb various languages, including English and Russian. Everybody else is down in there, as you can see, right the way through. Now, the instructions, again, they're a little bit sort of old school, the way they go together, as you can see down in here. So, straight off the back, we've got colour callouts, Humbrol, Model Master, guns, life colour, okay, and then you've got your parts callout. Obviously, we have got some greyed out, as you might imagine, because some of these parts aren't going to be used. So, quite complex, old school instructions. So, as you can see, starting off with the wheels, okay, so we've got all the wheels and the actual bogey system for the undercarriage. Then we've got the access boarding ladders, and then we've actually got some intakes. One would assume for the engines, and then working our way through sort of engine exhaust, things like that, before we really down to the cockpit. Cockpit pretty much basic, but because of the scale we're dealing with being 1/72nd, you're not going to see much in there, so really you don't have to worry about it too much. Okay, then we've actually got the actual tailplane system and the little tiny bits going on those. It might be worth marking these on your pad or down in here with a highlighter, because the thing is they're going to get knocked off well before you actually finish your build. All right, so a lot of those putting them back on. More exhausts, the props actually obviously going together, so you'll be 4 of those, and then we're off to the actual fuselage. Okay, so fuselage, I've got top and bottom system, a couple of formers, the actual flight deck as well being put in. Again, various lumps and bumps being fitted and added to this one, as you can imagine. And then down in here, we've actually got the actual layout and the measurements for putting in all those holes, because unfortunately they are not in the actual part themselves, although we'll double check looking at the interiors. So you've got all the measurements for exactly where all these lumps and bumps go, which is a little bit disappointing that you're going to have to work all this out yourself, but taking your time, careful measurements. Okay, you want to find your sort of bullseye point somewhere that, you know, is the same on both halves and work from there. Don't work one to the other, because otherwise you end up going too far off. Okay, then halves going together, nice piece of glass at the top, which I quite like that layout of doing it. Okay, that way you can mask it off and then do all the glue work. That lovely little bit of glass work around the nose as well being fitted on there, and a few more little air scoops and strafes being fitted onto the fuselage. Okay, fuel or auxiliary tanks. Sorry, these are actually not fuel tanks, are they? Are they not? These are the actual pods, ones assume. I'm not sure actually what those are, how they fit onto it, if they are auxiliary tanks that are going to fit on the front. Okay, but those being fitted on, the tail system being going, wings, engine, those nacelles being fitted to it, the cargo ramp obviously in the closed position, as you can see down on here, and then obviously we've got the tail planes, more lumps and bumps being added to this thing right the way over it, okay, and giving the positions of exactly where they're going to line up. Wings being fitted, tail section being fitted onto it, and then again more lumps, bumps and all the goodies bits going underneath. And it is like, these are obviously jammer pods or electronic warfare pods, again being fitted onto the side. But again, very much where does it go, but that's because they're down in here showing you exactly where those are going to fit and be put in. Okay, props being fitted on, got an access boarding ladder as well for the mid deck going in there as well. Alright, so pretty straightforward with those, and various vanes and things, and then obviously we've got colour call out and markings, things like that, as you might imagine, putting those on. Again, the instructions aren't exactly the best in the world, I'm not going to lie there, they're a little bit complex than everything else. Decals, again, a bit light in the box, for some reason they're pushed off to one corner and everything else, but generally they're not too bad. Okay, they're a little bit, I think these are going to be quite thick, catch them in the light, you can actually see quite a lot of carrier film on those. They look quite thick, but generally we're okay. And we were saying that there's like a torn edge on these decals as well, where they're not exactly brilliantly sort of done as well, unfortunately, but it's going to be adequate, I think. I've got, actually, there's a slight miss on here as well. I think these are silkscreen printed, but as you can see on the line-up area, they're not perfectly lined up because you wouldn't be able to see it. But generally, for what it is, I think you're going to be able to get away with that with some simple weathering. These other ones, to be honest, are just short of nasty right the way over this. You can't work out any of these little sort of, you know, information placards onto it because they are short of just blurred. Okay, so not brilliant, but again, I think we'll be okay. Right, fuselage. So, crispy bag. This, you would assume, is going to be the extra bag with the extra bits. Okay, so again, don't think Tamiya, think it's different, so you need a little bit of work in there. I.e., straight off the bat, you can probably see down in here these wonderful sink marks, which are actually smack bang because of these heavy bits of plastic in the back here. We know what the problem is. What's happening is that there's actually a situation. Is that supposed to be in there? I think that's probably not. I'm not sure. Okay, but what happens is it comes out the mould far too easy, and as you can see, overall, we do have a little bit of sink mark issues running right the way over this. This is the main three down in here. They're not exactly nice, and again, they're exactly the same on the other ones. Now, are you going to see them? Depending on your camo effect and your weathering that you're going to use. The other big thing that jumps straight out to me is that the actual engraved panel lining is a little bit hit and miss. Some of it's really heavy, some of it's very light. There's not exactly consistency right the way through, and also the angling of this panel lining right the way through this isn't the best. Okay, so some parts of it, like down in here, is quite big and thick and chunky. Other areas it gets very thin and then goes thick and everything else like that. It looks like, I don't know, it looks like this white area under here looks like it's stressed from when it was removed out of the remold as well. And also, straight off the bat, you can probably see it up on this edge. This is full of flash, which is just going to be a fit issue waiting to happen. There's a huge, you see this line under here? This is flash. It all needs to be removed, smoothed out perfectly before that wing joint butts up to it, because that is never going to happen. It's just going to be nasty all the way through. So it's not lending itself exactly brilliant to start with, but it is somewhat there. It's just that some of it is flash and everything else. This here, I don't think even should be in here. I think that's just flash, but that's a rock hard piece of flash. But again, giving a bit of a scrape round on this, I think rescribing it is pretty much a must just to make sure it's all good, and you'll be absolutely fine. On the other side, again, very reminiscent of the other one, just a little bit flashy and a little bit hard. Also, the plastic is very hard. There's no giving this plastic at all, it's rock hard. Okay, on the inside, as you can see, you know, it is what it is. Some big heavy duty ejector pin marks in there. Just make sure you're all clear with those and you'll be absolutely fine. But again, it's just bordering on close. Got ejector pin down in here. You can see how close that came to actually coming through. All right, but again, it's just one of those things where it's going to take a little bit of work. This isn't going to be a shake and bake kit, so just prepare yourself for a little bit extra sorting these things out. The wings, again, heavily detailed, heavily engraved, probably way too much for its scale if we're honest as well, and you can probably tell by this, the texture, it's almost like resin. In fact, you would say it's resin by looking at it. Again, very heavy, it needs to be smoothed out. The mould itself is very, very crudely cut, but you know, again, it wouldn't take too much to put right. Just sanding it, redoing it, and everything else should be fine. Again, under here, as you can see, huge great bits of flash, huge ejector pins down in here, and all those things that are going to worry you somewhat that you need to get flat and out of the way. Okay, then we've got The underside, again, pretty much the same story right the way through. Not so bad actually, if we're honest. In fact, it's amazing really, in here is better than it is on the surface of this. Alright, but again, it's functional. If you needed that texture into your paintwork, then, you know, it's there to start. If you used to put aluminium straight over this, you'd be fine. But again, you see these big sink marks showing their head? They're going to show through. So you've got these sink marks here and here, and as you can see, these are caused by the ejector pins. They're so big and heavy that they're actually showing through because you've got sink marks into the plastic as it makes its way through. Okay, so some of the other parts we've got, this is one of obviously the extras. So down in here we've got that different tail system for it. We've got this, the lumps and bumps that are going to fit under the centre of the fuselage down in there, one of the straights, some of the scoops, everything else. No problem with those, they all look to be quite nice. And if anything, and I think this is where this is an afterthought, the actual panel lining is far superior on this than it is actually on the kit. So nothing wrong with that at all right the way through. And in fact the ejector pins are a little bit smaller as well, so you can tell that's an afterthought. These are the sort of, you know, the electronic countermeasures or ECM type pods, as you can see, right the way through. Pretty heavy sprue gated and things like that, but generally I think we'll be okay with those. And again, unfortunately, the actual intake scoops, as you can see down in here, I think these are intake scoops. If they are, you're going to need a little bit of work just to open those up a bit, because I think they're technically not correct. Okay, a match pair with those. Okay, over into the other bag. So, this is the inside of the actual cargo cabin roof itself. Okay, and again, we've got release agent coming off of this. I can feel that telltale goo. Okay, so that's down in there. Then we've got the bulkheads, as you can see, some limited detail with those, no problem at all. We've got some of the gun turrets, obviously not for this version, but for other versions this will be the tail and the actual front turret. Okay, and a couple of the scoops. We've got the radome over here on this side, no problem at all. This is the cargo ladder, boarding ramp, I should say. The gear itself doesn't look too bad. The flight yokes actually don't look too bad either, they're okay. But when you get up down here, you see all this beautiful flash all over this, and it's quite heavy, so you're going to need to clean a lot of this up, obviously, before you go anywhere near it. And then on the inside, that's where you can feel it. I've actually got oil. You can see how greasy this is. This is release agent that's actually leaching off of this. And again, huge, great ejector pins you need to take care of down in here and on the blind side. This is something we often get asked. A lot of people say, do you need to wash your model? Is it really important? It is when it's like that. When you can feel it and it's off, honestly, before you go, get yourself a nice big sort of 2-inch brush, warm soapy water, not hot, definitely. You don't want to be melting your plastic or deforming it, into a bowl, give it a good rub over, right the way over with some soapy water, rinse it under a cold tap, and then stick them on the draining board and let them air dry, and you'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so down in here, some of the other small ones, you can see we've got some of the lumps, bumps and things. Again, a little bit of flash all over this. It's going to be the story right the way through, but generally we're all okay. The gear doesn't look too bad either. We're okay in there, and we've got some of the props. They're okay. They seem to be a good shape, no problem. Actually, it's quite a nice bit of detail up down in there as well for that tail, okay, for the actual tailpipe. Again, we've got a few of those, got 4 of those, you might imagine, one for each engine. Okay, the aft section. So again, huge, great panel line detailing on this one, as you might imagine, right the way through. And again, you can see this panel lining, how it goes from being quite heavy and then it gets thinner as it goes its way down. Again, we've got stress marks from ejector pins coming through, but saying that, again, it's very nicely detailed. Don't forget, it's this Russian, big, heavy type of stuff, good type of kit and everything else. You can probably see down in here, we've actually got the flaps, the tail planes, both sides two-sided. They're not posable, but again, good level of detail in all of those, no problem at all. And then down in the inside, unfortunately, if you were to have it open, you're going to have to take care of these ejector pins and get rid of these in here before livening it up and everything else like that. And again, just watching your, which you'll notice straight away, these have got huge big ejector pins on the inside. They're going to need to be removed first. Final stage, inside and the main gear doors, as you can see, you've got nothing in there whatsoever that's going to make anything. The flight deck doesn't look too bad. This you don't use either. This is for the tail gun system. This particular aircraft doesn't have it. Boarding ladder doesn't look too bad, okay, and everything else, and right the way through. The cargo deck, again, it's here. You can see you've got limited detail onto it, got a little bit of sink marks, and the actual ramp area down towards the actual tail. Not too bad. It's not brilliant, but you know, and as you can see the machining mark in there. See, it's a little bit more crudely done, but some of the details, like down in here, the sides for the cargo ramp, quite nicely done. And the actual cargo ramp itself, again, it's quite scratchy, but it's practical. It's all there. Okay, last up we got clear parts. So the clear parts usually aren't exactly brilliant, but actually they're not too bad. They're a little bit lumpy bumpy. Some of this, as you can tell, is release agent over this glass, so that's why it's not exactly clear, but this front one isn't too bad at all. That's looking quite nice all the way down in there. And we've got the open holes, we've got the actual everything else, the sort of, you know, the windows and that, which you don't get in this particular model, I don't think. But they're down in there, and as you say, they're domed slightly, so it's going to affect your view through them, as you can see like that. But generally, it's all right. Very, very practical. Okay, so now you're thinking, okay, Phil, you've just ripped apart this lovely kit. This is going to cost you around about 50 quid, 55 quid is the retail on this one, and it's not a AAA. No. But it is an An-12. It's a beautiful aircraft, and it's the only one in its, you know, 72nd scale. Roden have done a really good job, nice research and everything else. What I would suggest if I was building it is to get it together as quickly as possible, okay? Interior detail isn't going to be a big one on this because you're not going to see much in there. This is the electronics warfare one, so you're not going to have the back open either. That can all be closed up. Once you've got it as a whole, then I would think about going through the motions of actually taking care of some of these little problems with it. You know it's going to have fit issues all over this one. It's going to take a little bit of working, but that's where modelling skills come in. Just take care of it, sand it, fill it, sand it, fill it, rescribe it. Rescribing goes wrong, fill it, redo it. It will be worthwhile in the end. It will be a beautiful looking aircraft, but it's going to take a little bit of work. Again, one of those things where you can imagine the wing joins, they're going to be nasty, and putting it all together just generally is not going to be an easy ride. But it's going to be one of those models where people are going to look at and go, wow. Also, because this is the electronic warfare version of it with the lumps and bumps, which again are a real major pain in the butt to try and get those all lined up and everywhere, because you've got to measure it all. Again, it's going to be something a little bit different, because this is what takes my eye with this particular one, especially on this angle. You can see all those lumps and bumps, but you're going to see them all generally everywhere. This one up here on the tail, the one on the front, things like that. It's just that little bit different, and something where it's a little bit wow factor. If you're going to be taking it to a show, it'll be definitely a head turner and a showstopper, purely because you're not going to see many of these around. It's not going to be something that's to a penny everywhere, shall we say. So there we go. That is Roden's An-12BK-PPS kit in 1/72.